Hey everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Get Brand's Rants. So I'm going to try to be brief this time, for real. But, so the biggest thing, of course, that everybody's talking about right now is the fact that Bernie Sanders just dropped out of the race, and of course everybody's being like, oh, what are you going to do now? It's like, it was kind of already a foregone conclusion after the DNC threw their weight to stop Bernie's momentum. Momentum is a real thing in politics. In whenever we talk about primaries and everything else, whenever you do talk about electoral politics, because there's a lot of dynamics within it and everything else. The reality is that people vote for really a lot of psychological and sociological reasons, and so this whole thing right now, that the one thing I really want to address is this whole thing where everybody, particularly on social media, but everybody's on the, well, you have to declare your allegiance to Joe Biden. Look, there's one day that you might need to owe your allegiance to Joe Biden, and that's on Election Day. Until Election Day, you can say or do whatever you want to. By couching this discourse in the, you need to be 100%, like, you have to censor yourself, you have to censor your own political statements in order to try to convince whatever these non-voter, like these nebulous non-voters are in the world. And I did just read an Intercept article that I thought was particularly good. So I'll make sure I link that on the website and everything, which is basically saying that, oh, non-voters aren't actually these, elitists just doing protest votes, which, again, most of us on the left actually have been saying for a really long time, because the reality is, if you're homeless, for example, who's doing anything for you? Really? I mean, first of all, where are you getting media? You're not getting, all of the media and everything else. And, a lot of people who don't vote are not these privileged leftists who are doing, protest non-voting. Nobody doesn't vote as a protest. That's really it. It's, especially whenever it's difficult to vote and there's a lot of obstacles to voting, and especially if you're in a situation where you're, if your family hasn't been registered to vote and things like that, those are all barriers to actual voting. Now, is there a difference whenever there's a particularly leftist person who has a grassroots movement and doing all of the get out the vote programs for those populations that traditionally don't vote to then mobilize and get out and vote? Yes, that's a real energy. That was the whole reason why I was willing to put enough faith in electoral politics to back Bernie Sanders. But the reality is, electoral politics is electoral politics. It's not the encompassing reality of all politics, which most Americans think that's like heresy. No, let's just vote once every 4 years and then don't pay attention to anything until then. Don't pay attention to anything until then, and just sit around on social media or with your friends and berate anybody who doesn't agree with your chosen candidate. And the funny thing is that that's the caricature that they always put in front of us as leftists, like, that they say, like, we're the purists and everything. Like, I like to put it this way. While economists freak out over every single major event about what it might do to the stock market or the economy, I freak out about the Overton window. you know, which is just, where's the political discourse going to be now? One of the ironies is that on September 11th, a friend, and I don't remember who said it first, but somebody was like, "Well, we're invading Iraq now." It's not like we didn't know that Iraq had nothing to do with it and all this other stuff. It's just, and on September 11th, so that's the thing, whenever all these people, everything's a surprise. Everything's a freaking surprise. Nothing's a surprise. And it's okay. Anyway, so the challenge here, because right now is like, yesterday I would have already posted something being like, take to the streets today. This is, be safe in quarantine if you can. I always say that I try to take a harm reduction philosophy to life, which is nobody's perfect. Nobody's going to do the perfect political thing. Nobody's going to do, I could tell you all the ways that I have been as much as I tout, like, the anarchist in me and everything, like, the reality is I am a rule follower to my core. So it's my political leanings towards anarchy are a personal urge to remind myself not to be complicit and complacent. And that's the thing where I think most people, because who has that identity? Who has that ideology where, don't obey is, if obedience is one of your primary virtues, well, this is going to be a very difficult time for you, because you're going to continue being obedient and things are going to keep getting worse, and there's really no outlet. You're just continuing to be obedient to terrible people. Anyway, there's still hope. There is, it's not in electoral politics. We have to figure out more ways to do better, nonviolent, direct action in ways that doesn't end up helping spread a pandemic. Not sure what all of the avenues of that are. Part of it, one of the things that I really always loved about leftists in general, human rights activists, and again, I always refer back to my Catholic worker days, where it's a lot of it's witness work. It's witness work. It's just look at a situation, tell somebody's story, tell the people's story. I'm here in a poor neighborhood in Baltimore where it's primarily black people and everything else, and it's not like I'm breaking quarantine. I'm not going out. Baltimore Safe Haven, who I think are a great organization that I've mentioned before, are a block away, and yet I haven't gone out to their volunteer events in the last few weeks because of the quarantine. But the reality is, it's be there, witness it, like remind people that this is happening. This is what's really happening. You get a very skewed vision of the world when you only look at certain venues. CNN, on the day that Bernie Sanders dropped out, they were touting the statistical racial and gender dynamics and age dynamics of it being like, this is completely different from all of the other primaries. What could have been different? It's like, it's a freaking pandemic. Bernie Sanders had already changed over his entire campaign to being pandemic response, and he was telling people actively, don't go out. That's what happened. It's not rocket science. It's not, well, the age disparity has changed. Come on. CNN's awful. It's awful. I mean, I'm doing these videos. This is all opinion piece stuff. I'm not a journalist or anything else, but they stopped doing journalism I don't know how long ago. Anyway, things are. I mean, things aren't okay. I mean, there's concentration camps in the country. They have moved like known infected people into the general populations of these detention centers. So we know the pandemic is spreading like wildfire within them. I would say there's probably going to be a big media blackout and a big, in general, blackout where ICE, Trump, federal government, Republicans, whoever, whatever bad actors you want to, are all going to work together to make sure that people do not know how bad things are there. Because, the reality is, if you admit that the problem is there, then you have to accept that you have bear some responsibility for it. And that's where most people don't get it. And that's where a lot of people don't, they like living in their little comfort zone. And, as much as it is hurtful to a lot of people to hear about, that I always go back to a letter from a Birmingham jail. The white moderate is the problem in America. And that's by design over the course of centuries. It's not like, hey, you individual white moderate, I blame you for everything. But the trend and the tendency towards wanting to be safe and comfortable versus feeling like you need to do the right thing because you have a responsibility. So I guess that's where I'm going to leave it, is no matter what our political system is, even if, Gavin Newsom's been talking about, referring to California as a nation state. I think that's phenomenal. If the United States goes the way of the USSR and, breaks up into a whole bunch of smaller territories, I don't think that's actually the worst thing in the world. I think the American South becomes a nightmare of human rights atrocities, and communities of color will be literally under attack. So there would have to be a lot of... This whole situation is a little bit crazy, but don't freak out. Whoever you are, wherever you are, freaking out is the last thing. Be angry. Do whatever you need to do. Say whatever you need to say. Never stop being angry, because there's plenty to be angry about. But, it's... No matter what the situation is, you could always do the right thing. No matter what the situation is, you could always build bridges with other people. We're getting to a point where I think the best message that I can give is really to active duty military people, saying, get ready to not follow orders very soon. Because United States military personnel, the whole concept behind it is about following orders, listening to your superior officer, do what you're told to do. And there needs to be a whole lot of not doing that very soon. Um, we'll see. We'll see where it goes. My only advice to people is between now and November, don't talk about Donald Trump or Joe Biden or even Bernie Sanders. Talk about ways that you can create, whether big or small, real changes in the neighborhoods, world, state, whatever it is around you. Just do what you can. Harm reduction, approach to life. There's not one strategy that every single person's going to do. There's not one strategy that every single person's going to be good at. Everybody can do their part. Don't just look at the stock market. Look at the Overton window. Thanks again, and I hope everybody has a great week.